Krishna, thank you, Jagāi Mādhāi, for your kind introduction. And thank you all for being here. And I'm so happy to be in the Bhakti Center. It's the place to be. Be there or be square. This is where it's all happening. Okay, so without further ado, first I will, I think you can see what my topic is, and we'll start with a verse from Śrīmad Bhagavatam, one which some of you may know already. And then I want to launch into this topic ever so briefly. It's a very big topic. And first we can chant some pranati. Om Ajnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kalamayam Dadati Swaparamtiham Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuddhavakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saradam Raghunatam Pitam Dhammasajivam Sadhaitam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sadhana Dalita Shri Vishakamitamscha Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prashadine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Aschatyaye Shatarine Manchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhaveyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dīnamaro Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Our topic today is what I call Dialogical Vaishnavism. I think we all have some idea what dialogue means and what Vaishnavism means. So I've made it into an adjectival dialogical Vaishnavism. And my subtitle, Extending the Connection, is meant to allude to the word yoga. Yoga is often translated as connection. The English cognate for yoga is yoke. To yoke is it's considered actually the earliest meaning of the word yoga. So extending the connection is what I want to suggest could be something to do, something to engage in. And so to start this, I thought let's go with a well-known verse description of the sadhus, because I like to think that the Hare Krishna movement is not a guru movement, it's a sadhu movement. Srila Prabhupada gave us the tools, as we say today, the tools for becoming sadhus and sadhvis, the feminine form of sadhu, although the word sadhu can also be used feminine, as with Prabhu, Prabhi. Ladies can be addressed in terms of Sanskrit grammar, either as Prabhu or Prabhi, or as sadhu or sadhi. That's another subject. So here we go. Shall we chant this together? All right. Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ. Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ. Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ. Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ. Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām. Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām. Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām. Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām. Ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ. Ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ. Ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ. Ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ. Sādhavaḥ sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ. Sādhavaḥ sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ. Sādhavaḥ sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ. Sādhavaḥ sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ. Anyone else like to give it a shot?
Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ.
Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ.
Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām.
Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām.
ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ.
Ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ.
sādhavaḥ sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ.
Sādhavaḥ sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ.
Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ.
Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ.
Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām.
Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām.
ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ.
Ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ.
sādhavaḥ sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ.
Sādhavaḥ sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ.
Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ.
Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ.
Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām.
Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām.
Ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ.
Ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ.
Sādhavaḥ sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ.
Sādhavaḥ sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ.
Some ladies, please.
Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ.
Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ.
Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām.
Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām.
ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ.
Ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ.
Sādhavaḥ sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ.
Sādhavaḥ sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ.
Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ.
Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ.
Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām.
Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām.
ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ.
Ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ.
Sādhavaḥ sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ.
Sādhavaḥ sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ.
One more lady to make an even number of three.
Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ.
Titikṣavaḥ kāruṇikāḥ.
Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām.
Suhṛdaḥ sarva-dehinām.
ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ.
Ajāta-śatravaḥ śāntāḥ.
Sādhavaḥ sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ.
sādhavaḥ, sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ.
Very good, very good. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Swami, Śivānanda. The symptoms of a sadhu are that he is tolerant, merciful, and friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies, he is peaceful, he abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. It's a very sublime translation, and yet I dared to add a more literal translation. Sadhus have sadhu ornaments. This is sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ. They are tolerant, titikṣavaḥ. They're compassionate, kāruṇikāḥ. They're dear friends to all embodied beings, sarva-dehinām. Having no born enemies, ajāta-śatravaḥ. And they are peaceful. So, this is a kind of, we could say, a definition of sadhu. What is a sadhu? If anyone on the street asks you, what is a sadhu? You'll immediately know what to answer. Of course, a lot of people on the streets of New York are eager to know what is a sadhu. Maybe not yet. Only time separates us. They will all be lining up at, what is this, number 25? First Avenue. Yeah. Yeah, so this gives some it gives a sort of very brief portrait. And what I want to suggest is it gives a very general sense, a non-sectarian idea of a sadhu. And that pretty much sums up my whole point today. Are there any questions? So, it is an aspiration, I would say, for those who take up spiritual life, those who practice yoga, broadly speaking, and more specifically, Bhakti yoga. It's an aspiration. We want to cultivate sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ. This is the abstract now. Sādhu-bhūṣaṇāḥ. We want to be sadhus, not because we want some reputation. Oh, there's a sadhu. That's not the point. The point is to be all that we can be. And I believe much is encapsulated. Much of what we all aspire to be is encapsulated in this expression sadhu. One of the meanings of sadhu also is good. And it's sometimes used as an exclamation when someone makes a very wonderful activity of any sort. If someone does a wonderful performance of any sort, then instead of bravo, bravo, one says sadhu, sadhu. Or if one says something very insightful, then one may respond, sadhu, this is a sadhu. So I think this is a kind of aspiration for us to be sadhus, to act as sadhus, to think as sadhus, to feel as sadhu, and to recognize, to be able to recognize sadhutva, goodness, very broadly speaking, but sadhutva in others. I think this is, well, yesterday we were, of course, going through the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I like to think of this very extensive work, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, also is an important, as I said yesterday, monumental work of sadhutva by a great sadhu about sadhus. So that was yesterday's topic. I won't review that now. So what are these, as Prabhupada calls them, symptoms? Titikshu, tolerance, compassion, kāruṇika, being a friend to all embodied beings, suhṛdaḥ, sarva-dehinām. Deha means body. There are other words in Sanskrit. Sharira. Sharira means that which collapses. We all have that. We're all walking around with shariras, and they're all going to collapse one day. But deha, I think, has a more neutral sense. And it's often associated with the sense of that which is occupied. So within the body there is someone. And so one who is occupying a body will be called a dehin, which in the nominative becomes dehi, and then the plural genitive, it becomes dehinām. So of embodied ones, how many embodied ones? Sarva-dehinām, all embodied ones. So every embodied being is included. And the word suhṛdaḥ is often translated friend, as Prabhupada does, friendly. It's one of several words for friends, but it has a kind of special sense because of the word within this word, namely hrit. Hrit means heart, and so suhṛdaḥ has a sense of really close friend, someone who always wants the best for us. A heart friend, we may want to say, as opposed to a bandhu there's other terms. And this interesting expression, ajāta-śatravaḥ, shatra means enemy, and ajāta means not born. One whose enemy is not born. The suggestion being that there's just no, the quality of the sadhu is such that no one feels like being an enemy to that person. It just isn't there because of the other qualities, we can say, of the sadhu. Of course, we might want to say, well, I'm skeptical. I don't know anyone who doesn't have enemies, especially in the present age. So I probably have a lot of ajāta-śatrus, a lot of born enemies. Well, okay, but we're also speaking of an ideal to aspire for. And so I think it's not unreasonable to say we would all agree it would be nice that we would have no enemies. That no one would think of themselves as our enemy. And that would be something worth endeavoring for in that position. And then we could say with all of these qualities together, what is the sort of end product or end emotion or feeling of a person who is a sadhu? They're śāntāḥ. We all know the mantra, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. I think this would be a nice mantra to have on billboards all over all over the world. You know, maybe it's a bit much to have Hare Krishna, sounds a bit too sectarian, but for some people. But, yeah, why not? Shanti, shanti. And then people will ask, what is that, shanti? That is an interesting topic. Okay, dialogical? Yoga, some people think of yoga in this way. Right? And the cartoon sort of indicates we're all distracted. Yoga is about, among other things, yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. You could say it's about getting undistracted. So being a sadhu also means being undistracted, being focused, because of being shanta. When one is not disturbed, also Krishna tells us in the Bhagavad Gita, there's no question of being happy without being peaceful, he says. He says it rhetorically, what is the question of being happy without being peaceful? Distraction. Devamrita Swami, he talks about weapons of mass distraction. There are a lot of those, and what I want to suggest is that sadhu-tva can facilitate, communication on a deeper level, and this will facilitate reduction, perhaps elimination of the distractions of this world for greater numbers of persons. And so I think it's nice to think, we sometimes use this word preaching, and this is not to say that this is a bad word, it's not a dirty word. It's a word which Srila Prabhupada used, I don't know how many times, a lot. So I don't want to, put any aspersions on this word. But I do want to suggest something, maybe we want to say preaching as sharing, maybe that would be more satisfactory, but in any case, this morning I wrote sharing rather than preaching, because sometimes we might have a conception of preaching which is self-defeating, rather than extending connections. We might actually be breaking connections, and that's not what we want, is it? Little bit of imagery to perhaps stir our imagination. I think this is the banyan tree at the Adyar Library, the Theosophical Society south of Chennai. We all know what a banyan tree is. It has it seems to have lots of roots. So I thought this is a nice image for us to reflect on in relation to the idea of dialogue. And we have a verse from Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, Aham sarvasya prabhava matta sarvam pravartate. Now some could take this in a sectarian way, because Krishna is saying everything. I am the Prabhu, I am the Prabhu of everything. I'm the master of everything. Mattaha, from me, sarvam pravartate, extends out, emerges, comes out. Well, but I think we can also take it in a non-sectarian way. I think we can take it in a non-sectarian way. There is someone, let's call him the Supreme Person, and he's identifying himself as being a source, which is common, or who is common to all. So I think that makes a nice sort of starting point. There are common roots which connect us all. It's not a very profound point, it's kind of obvious, but then it's also seems to be something we very quickly forget much of the time. And that becomes a problem. Common roots and common aspirations. And Krishna says also in the Bhagavad Gita, Mama Vartma Anuvartante Manusya Vartan Sarvasham. Mama Vartma, my path, Anuvartante, they follow. Who follows? Manusya, all human beings. O Partha, Sarvasha Manusya. O Arjuna, everyone is following my path, as Prabhupada translates, in all respects. Sarvasha can be taken like that. Everyone follows my path in all respects. That's, of course, an interesting idea to think about and reflect on. What does he actually mean by that? I sometimes think it means, well, some are going this way on the path and some are going the opposite way. But we're all on the same path. Yeah, some may be going around in circles on the path, but okay. But he's identifying there's some kind of directionality suggested here. And with directionality we have a sense of progression. And with that, I think we have a sense that the sadhu, being a well-wisher, being suited of all beings, sarva-dehinām, is a well-wisher, meaning wanting to encourage everyone to progress on the path, to make a progression. One way or another. Another sort of imagery we might make use of is the bridge. I used this it's already some years ago. In Hungary, I was asked to speak about bridge preaching. Have you heard that expression? And some people get quite excited. Yes, bridge preaching. And others say, ooh, bridge preaching. No. So I said, well, to me, if anyone is preaching Krishna consciousness, Bhakti Yoga, in a positive way, which is connecting with others, that's a bridge. That's bridge preaching, and it seems to me that any good preaching is going to be bridge preaching, and the best bridge preacher is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And of course, our Srila Prabhupada was an incredible bridge preacher. Isn't it?
That's fine.
Yeah. So here's another verse to contemplate, also from the Gita. Adveshta sarva-bhūtānām maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nirahamkara Samadukkha sukha kshami. And this a little bit expands on the idea of the sadhu, but it's connected to, it's within the 12th chapter where Krishna is explaining who is dear to him. And he's listing different qualities. I won't spend a lot of time on this. The second line, near mama, nothing is mine. Near ahankara, free from what Prabhupada calls false ego, false sense of identity. And then samadukkha sukha, being equal in both happiness and distress. So being on a platform which is somehow above all of the shiftings of our experiences of positive and negative in this world. And shami can take as being forgiving. Very difficult we tend to find it difficult to forgive others. In any case, all of this can be helpful, I think, in bridging, which I think is, and we can think of dialogue as bridging. Another bridge, and I thought, here's an image, well, thinking, yeah, I don't know about this bridging. It's kind of scary, right? Just talking with others can be scary. Yes, there's a risk. The biggest risk is one's false ego might be wounded. But for the sadhu, there's no danger, because the sadhu is beyond the false ego, which we are aspiring to. Dialogue can be risky and greatly rewarding. How is it rewarding? Because it's extending the connection. And it's connecting ourselves with others, it's connecting others with our beloved Lord, Lord Krishna. Okay, statistics. We all love statistics. Maybe we should start with the question at the bottom right here. Is yoga a religion? Because here I'm showing world religions by percentage. This is a little outdated. I couldn't find a better up-to-date on the internet. I'm sure it's there, but anyway. So the main point I want to make from this is the vast majority of people in this world feel some sort of commitment. They identify themselves with one or another quote-unquote religion or religious tradition, each of which, of course, has any number of variations, any one of these. I was asked some years ago, already so many years ago, I was invited actually to teach a course at the University of Florida, and the course I should teach was called Religions of India. And I thought, religions of India? Oh my God. There's so many religions in India. Where to start? So, okay, it's not about the numbers here so much, but it's, well, there is one section that says other religions, 12.48%, and then non-religious, 14.09%. I think that could be contested.
Yeah.
Because, why? Because Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Śraddha mayo ayam purusho yo yat śraddha sa eva sa. He says everyone is chock full of śraddha, of faith. Śraddha maya, not maya, but maya. Śraddha maya, ayam purusha. The purusha is śraddha maya, is full of faith. Everyone has faith. You will ask, even the atheist? Yes, even the atheist. What is their faith? Their faith is that there is no God. Okay. Some questions that we might want to think about if we're thinking about dialogical Vaishnavism. The first one, how can our own spiritual lives and devotional experience of Bhakti Yoga be enriched through open engagement with people of faith in other spiritual traditions? So we've just seen people have so many different faith traditions. And we might ask how our experience, our own experience, might be enriched by engaging, again, not preaching, not finger waving, you're all going to hell. But dialogue, which of course means there's at least two persons and they both have two ears and one mouth, and as the saying goes, how does it go? 2 ears. We have 2 ears and one mouth, and think about that for a minute. So this I'm just raising as a question, suggesting, of course, that our devotional experience in Bhakti Yoga just might be enriched. It might become deeper. It might become more satisfying to the heart. And then turning sort of to the, if we want to say, outreach direction, the first question is a kind of in-reach question. And the second one might be outreach. How can we share Bhakti Yoga with others in ways that are value-adding for persons of faith, thus pursuing genuine friendship and cooperation for fostering spiritual uplift of all? So there's a history to what has come to be called interfaith or interreligious dialogue. And the modern history is often marked by an event in Chicago in the late 19th century. You may know what I'm speaking about. The Parliament of Religions, which took place in 1893. And over the years, over the decades, various sorts of various sorts of formal dialogue have been engaged in. And there's a history to that. And I met one scholar, he was in Oxford for some time, and I was chatting with him about his study. He researches, or he researched this history of interfaith dialogue. And I asked him, what do you think about the Parliament of the World's Religions interfaith dialogue, which I think it had just taken place in Barcelona. I had attended it. And I asked him, what do you think it was? How did you, because he had attended, what did you think of it? And he said, well, the main thing is that it happens. At least it goes on. It's something at least is happening. Some kind of effort to make dialogue is going on. I have to say, on the perhaps negative side, I find a lot of these formal interfaith dialogues become sort of serial monologues. One person speaks, and then the other speaks, and the other speaks, and nobody's really listening very much to anybody else. But okay, but it goes on. At least some attempt is there. This is a bigger topic, and I don't want to linger. But the third question is, how can we? Who is we? Well, all of us sitting here, perhaps. How can we foster a culture of dialogue among Krishna bhaktas? A culture of dialogue. So this is a bit, we can say, my little confession of what I would like to be a very small agent for, is encouraging us, first of all, to be thinking about it and then talking about it, culturing a culture of dialogue. And a lot can be said about this. For example, well, what about dialogue just amongst each other? What to speak of dialogue with others? Someone who likes to think in precision terms might want to have a definition of dialogue. Well, here's one you might like from Scott London in an essay called The Power of Dialogue. He says, dialogue is a form of discussion aimed at fostering mutual insight and common purpose. Imagine that. The process involves listening. Huh? No. We don't listen. We just tell everyone what they should be listening to. It involves listening with empathy, searching for common grounds, exploring new ideas. No, we don't have new ideas. We have very ancient ideas. We got to get to the ancient ideas. There's no need for new ideas. New ideas and perspectives, and bringing unexamined assumptions into the open. Nah, I don't have any unexamined assumptions. I've got it all up front. I know exactly what I'm all about. Yeah, so you can see there's a lot of challenge. Just if we take that definition, that would suggest we might have a bit of homework to do in our own efforts. Another definition, this is William Isaacs from his Dialogue in the Art of Thinking Together.
It's a great definition.
Thinking together. A dialogue is a conversation in which people think together in relationship. A dialogue is a way of taking the energy of our differences and channeling it towards something that has never been created before. That's getting way out there, isn't it? And yet, what I want to suggest is, I think this is what we're really looking for. I think we're looking for this. I think this is where the excitement of what Srila Prabhupada so many times called Krishna consciousness is to be found, and which Śivānanda Prabhu emphasized so much in his 3-volume memories of his times with Srila Prabhupada. What is the book called? Chasing Rhinos. Yeah, Chasing Rhinos. so many rhinos running around in New York City, chasing rhinos with the Swami, he emphasized the adventure, isn't it? The adventure of Krishna consciousness or Bhakti. Where does that adventure come from? Well, you may say, we don't do dialogue, we do debate. If at best if we're going to talk with someone, it's going to be a debate, it's not going to be dialogue. Okay, I'll very quickly do this, and then I'm kind of watching the clock, and I want to give a bit of time for discussion because I'm talking about dialogue. Okay, when it comes to modes of conversation in which people disagree, conservatives, wary of dialogue, tend to favor debate. Unlike dialogue, debate implies a clear-cut contest. You make your best case, I'll make mine, in which, in principle, one side wins, as the lawyers would understand very well. The social benefit of debate, say its advocates, is that a vigorous contest of ideas is the best and perhaps only way for society to find the truth. So that's a kind of, maybe that could be taken as a purva paksha to what I'm suggesting we want to do, dialogue rather than debate. But I'm going to just leave that hanging and come back to our tradition ever so briefly to say what might be the basis within our Bhakti tradition, in particular the Gaudiya or Chaitanya Vaishnava tradition, for what we're calling dialogue. And I want to suggest as a starting point, again from Chaitanya Charitamrita, the description of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's meeting with the Chankaji. It's an interesting little passage to read in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, 16th chapter perhaps. And I'm just I think I'll leave it at that, but I will also just say that there is reason to appreciate that in our later tradition, beginning with actually Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, and of course our Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I believe we can find also elements of what we are thinking about here, what we're calling dialogue. Although one might want to say, well, Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, they were preaching, yes, yes and. Yes and. So I think I'll leave it at that and see if there's any comments or reflections from any of you, from the lawyers perhaps, first. Yes,
I have a few Maharaj. Some maybe, the first, thanks. These are probably you may find them like short question and answers. So you were talking about ajāta-śatravaḥ Maharaj, and so you were explaining how, how is it possible, this definition that someone has no enemies seems ideal. Perhaps another way to explain how this is a possible meaning for a sadhu is to have no enemies from the perspective of the sadhu himself.
Yeah.
He sees no one as an enemy. He sees no one as an enemy, even if they see him as one. After all, Hiranyakashipu found Prahlad, who was the greatest of all sadhus, as an enemy. So I was thinking that was one explanation.
Yes, thank you, that's good.
I had a question, I lost my spot. I had a question, I remember this one. I had a question about, you were explaining the definition of suhṛt. You were explaining the definition of suhṛt, and towards the end, before you moved on, you distinguished it from the meaning of bandhu. But I wanted to know what the distinction is. You moved on without providing that. Would you please?
Okay, put me on the spot. Bandhu, my understanding, it's generally associated with a friend who is more, it's a relative. It's someone who's kind of maybe a friend relative. So a relative may or may not be a real well-wisher. You know. There's also Sakha and Sakhi, and these are, of course, they're, you know, the gopis are the Sakhis, and the Sakhas are the gopas. So they're companions, and certainly they're very close friends, but whether we can say, you know, more close than a suhṛt, I don't know. But and then there's mitra, from which we get maitra, friendliness. And I think that's a kind of broader term. That's my understanding.
Maybe I just do one more fast one, then I will talk further. Yeah. Oh, so your picture of when you were taught. So you had your photo of the bridge, or a picture of the bridge, and you were talking about bridge preaching, and you were describing how it's risky. And Maharaj, you said the greatest risk is to the false ego. And I had just a question about the types of risks and how they might relate to each other, or which is the greatest risk. I thought of two risks besides that one. Perhaps it's not different from it, but the two risks that I was thinking of were, one, if you so the preacher is on one side of the bridge, the person he's speaking to, we could say is technically on the other side, and the preacher is trying to bring that person to his side of the bridge. So maybe the preacher instead, he gets influenced by the person on the other side, but perhaps that's not different from your response, from your point that the greatest risk is the false ego, because if you get taken to the other side, I suppose that's because your false ego covered your mind more than Krishna's, and giving into Krishna's intelligence.
A longer discussion, because I give seminars on this, which go over a few days, and we get into all of that.
Oh, okay. And I'll mention one more risk, and you don't have to comment.
And then the time will be up.
Okay, that's enough. Yeah.
What, can you explain what you mean by sharing bhakti yoga? Because I was kind of understanding that we don't own bhakti, or bhakti is just
It's
in
there.
here. So when you say we're going out and sharing bhakti yoga, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is maybe going out on Haridāsa or book distribution. But I guess I just don't really understand what it means to share bhakti yoga.
You're right. It's about going out on Harinam, certainly, and all the things that we do. This is certainly sharing. And I think what I want to say is, can we stretch the envelope? Can we push the envelope and think of and find more ways to share Bhakti Yoga? And put a little more emphasis on the notion of sharing as a kind of two-way thing instead of a one-way thing. That's all. That's the short answer. Purushas.
Thank you for the lovely talk, Maharaj. Just a little thought on sort of a historical reflection. to make sense of what seem to be perhaps contradictory elements of our own tradition with acharyas in our line, especially from, I mean, you could look at the whole line. There's this element of an acharya to preach, to defeat, to destroy contending views.
Jagāi,
You know,
shopping.
but they're doing this in a way that actually is a thing of yoga, is a thing of compassion, is a thing of love and truth.
Yeah,
Is coming from the place of being a sadhu.
yes.
But then there's also, with those acharyas, and then within our tradition more broadly, this whole enterprise of being a sadhu who's having dialogue, and maybe not cutting and chopping and clearing and preaching.
With
Uh,
machete.
Yeah. And so both somehow simultaneously exist. They aren't necessarily contradicting each other.
Yeah.
So I just wanted you to maybe elaborate a little on, or comment or object or whatever.
Within the next 15 seconds.
Yes.
Well, I think you've brought up the appropriate point that, yes, there's also the cutting, the chopping, the speaking strongly. All of these things are there, and as you said, they don't have to be either or. And I just want to call more attention to the or. There's the either and there's the or, and here I'm talking about the or. And if we can, engage more in this sort of mode, I think it will be for all of our benefit. And it's an art, and there's so much we can learn to do this sort of thing. It's an art, it's a skill. It's also, I think, a matter of becoming literate of other traditions, to actually learn about them. Yeah, there's so much to be said, but the time has come when we say thank you all very much for your kind attention.